action rather than. Hey, good evening, ladies and gentle drunks. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'd like to welcome you all to the fourth dimension. Big book study, that is. I'm very happy to be here, guys. I'm very happy that you guys are here. I never feel more alive than when I'm sharing the miracle of God's recovery in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous that I discovered in a book called Alcoholics Anonymous. And let's share that book together tonight, shall we? As we always do, guys, we're going to kick off with the set-aside prayer. Goes a little something like this. Sing along if you know the words. God, please help me set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, and about the 12 steps. And please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, what my fellow man, and the 12 steps are all about. Amen. Okay, and as this is the fourth dimension big book study, I always like to read the two parts of our book that refer to the fourth dimension. So first of all, on page 8, Bill Wilson writes, I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And then on page 25, Bill Wilson writes that we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. All right, brothers and sisters, we're going to be catapulted. We're going to be rocketed. And for the sake of the tradition and custom of the fourth dimension big book study, everyone will please put one hand up like this. And everybody please put another hand up like this. And everybody go, oh yeah. All right, man. We absolutely insist on enjoying life here in Alcoholics Anonymous. We are not a glum lot. And I'm very happy to be here. Happy you guys are here. I was just chatting with someone right before this meeting about step 4, and I was just thinking to myself about how truly transformational step 4 is, and I'm really excited. Right now is I really believe that what we're going to talk about tonight in particular is really the turning point, one of the first major transformational points that we're going to have in our lives in Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay. Step 3, super important. Yes. Step 1, absolutely. Understanding what our problem is. Step 2, yes. Coming to believe that there is a power. Yes. And that power is bigger than my problem. Yes. Super important. Step 3, making a decision, making that decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God, making a decision fundamentally to continue on with the rest of the program. In fact, Bill Wilson in the 12 and 12 says about step 3, the entire, in fact, the effectiveness of the whole AA program will rest upon how well and earnestly we have tried to come to a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Okay, so the rest of the program depends upon how earnestly I make this decision in step 3. But as we've talked about, the paradox that every alcoholic suffers and comes to when we're at step 3. Okay, I know that I'm suffering from a fatal disease and that I am in a trap from which there is no escape on my own. Step 1. Step 2, I've come to believe that there is a power. Step 3, I am making a decision that this is it, man. This is the way that I want to go. Okay, but as we've talked about, if I make a decision that I'm going to travel to Las Vegas, does that mean I'm in Las Vegas? Absolutely not, man. I haven't gone anywhere. I've made a decision. I booked the flight, but I haven't gotten on the plane. Okay? In step 4, this is the real beginning, man. And what did I say last week? How do I know when a sponsee is truly finished step 3? They have a pen and a piece of paper, and they're starting to do work in their step 4. So last week, we started with columns 1, 2, and 3. Okay, we listed people, principles, or institutions with whom we were angry in column 1. Column 2, we asked ourselves why we were angry. Okay, and we determined what it was in me that was affected. And here I'm going to share something quickly. I think I am. Okay, so we listed people, principles, or institutions with whom we were angry. Okay, first of all. Then we listed why, and we talked about just quick bullet points as to why I'm angry. Resentment, again, means to re-feel. It means refelt anger. Anger that I felt from the past. Someone was talking to me the other day about, these things that they were writing down in their very first step 4 that happened to them 30 years ago, and that they were frankly embarrassed that it was still on there. Man, I get that. When I did my first step 4, I had a guy on there, kid at Woodbine Elementary School who pushed me off the slide and told me no one liked me. I have no idea what his name is, but I can remember what he did. Okay. And then we write down why. Why? Because he pushed me off the slide and it embarrassed me and humiliated me. Then we talk about affects my, okay? In column 3, what is impacted? What was affected by this person? We look at the page at the top of page 65. It says, on our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security? Okay, so these are all going in column 3, self-esteem, security. And we talked about the 3 types of security. Okay, physical security, emotional security, and financial security. Okay. Then was it our ambitions, our personal relationships, or our sexual relationships that had been interfered with? Okay, and we talked about how the more things that are affected in column 3, the more powerful this resentment typically is. Okay, one of the things I mentioned last week, and I think it's really important, just in terms of a common language that we can use with our sponsees, is that when we're listing out these resentments, I will have dozens of nickel and dime resentments, just cheap little easy resentments that have just come through life. But all of us, when we get to AA, also have what I call $50 bill resentments. Okay, raise your hand if you know what I mean when I say a $50 bill resentment. Okay, yeah, and in either case, I got to clean it all up. Okay, I got to clean it all up because those nickel and dimes add up. Okay, but those $50 bills, in my experience as well, are the ones that I most stringently need to work this particular solution that we're going to talk about tonight. Okay, so up until now, this is all still problem. This is all still blame game, man. And I love blame game. I'm a gold medal Olympic champion blame game expert. Okay, I spent my whole life blaming other people for the reason that what had happened to me. And don't you understand it? What happened to me happened to you. You'd be an alcoholic too. This isn't my fault. Okay, there's others to blame. Okay, that's the problem. And in step 4, for the first time, what I'm starting to do is get a look at what we call and what we struggle with as alcoholics, this very, very bizarre term that grown-ups actually often refer to as reality. Okay, this is what we're going to start to glimpse for the first time in step 4, and most importantly, step 5, I believe. Okay, the reality of our lives and the truth about our lives. And that's why we have to be searching and fearless in this inventory as we go through it. So as I mentioned last week, we're going to say a prayer before we start, something about, God, please be with me in this process and show me what I need to learn about myself so I can stay sober and be closer to you. Something like that, okay? Then I'm going to pick up the book. I'm going to pick up the pen. I'm going to start writing. And we talked about last week, a very, important tool, if you will, that I suggest to my sponsees is to go and do a minimum of 10 minutes every day. Set a timer, 10 minutes every day, so that I'm consistently moving through the step 4. Okay. Somebody told me one time that when you're going through hell, don't stop. Don't stop. Keep moving through. Okay. When you're going through hell, don't pitch a tent. Just keep moving through it. Okay. The only way out is through. Okay. So that's why set that 10-minute timer and we keep going. Okay. So maybe the timer goes off and we stop at 10 minutes, or we keep writing for another hour and a half in any event we talked about last week. What do we do then? We take our step 4, and where do we put it? Someplace safe. We put it in our step 4 spot so that it is not discovered by someone else, that we don't misplace it, we don't lose it, we don't accidentally put it into the little wooden job kiosk at the city of Calgary, as I did, as several people mentioned to me over the last week. You guys really enjoyed that story. Somebody told me you need to tell that story more often because it was funny. So, I will, obviously. And we write down column 1, everyone who we resent. Okay, then column 2, why? And we look at page 65. We see we don't ever want to use more than 19 words. Quick little bullet points in the examples there. Okay, if you look at the examples on page 65, Bill Wilson, Mr. Brown, why? He's got quick bullet points. Okay, Mr. Brown's wife, why? Just quick little bullet points. Okay, this is not me writing the ongoing saga of Kevin's life. This is not my memoirs, okay? This is not me trying to get my sponsor on my side. This is just the facts, okay? Then we go to the effects, my self-esteem, physical security, emotional security, financial security, my ambition, my personal relationships, and my sexual relationships, okay? So, and just in the spirit of column 3, one more time, very quickly, guys. Let's say that example of the kid in Woodbine Elementary School who pushed me off the slide and told me nobody liked me, okay? Does that affect my self-esteem? Yes. Did that affect my financial security? Unless he was going to steal my allowance when he did it, no, it did not affect my it did not affect my financial security. Does that affect my physical security? Yes, he pushed me off the slide, man. My hands were all cut up from the rocks. Yeah, physical security. Now, did that impact my emotional security? Absolutely, man. 20 years later, here I am sitting in a treatment center trying to get sober, still hanging on to this thing, okay? And I talked about this last week, man. Please don't ever let your alcoholism convince you that you don't really have these petty little childish resentments from childhood. I absolutely did, okay? And it wasn't pretty. I'm not proud of it, but it's who we are, man, okay? And I can't clean up my house a little bit and expect to stay okay. We got to clean the whole house, man. Okay. Nickel and dime resentments and the $50 bills. I got to clean it all up. Okay. Then did it impact my ambition? Yeah. Why would you even go to school and have friends and try to make friends with people if, guys are just going to push you off the slide and tell you no one likes you? Did it impact my personal relationships? Yeah, well, with him and probably with my other friends and so on. And then sexual relationships, no, it didn't impact any of those. So that's what we do in column 3. Those are the ones that we go through, okay? So now it's all been blame game up till here, okay? Here's who hurt me. Here's how they hurt me. Here's how it affected me. That's my favorite part of step 4, okay? I get to just wrap myself in the warm blanket of it was all their fault, okay? How much do I love that? However, right now, tonight in particular, what we are going to go through now is one of the most important and pivotal turning points in Alcoholics Anonymous, I think in the entire program of Alcoholics Anonymous, outside of working with others, outside of carrying this message to the alcoholic who still suffers, which I will always contend is the single most important tool that we have for sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? When in doubt, go help someone. When we are suffering, go help someone. Go find a way to be useful. Go find someone to help. That is the number one tool, I believe, in Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? Prayer and meditation is a very quick second to that. But in terms of the actual tactics and tools and the spiritual toolkit that we are given, what we're going to talk about tonight is really one of the most transformational parts of Alcoholics Anonymous, in my experience. Certainly making amends is absolutely key, and I can't stay sober if I don't. But this particular tool literally changed my brain. It literally changed my mind. And what my grand sponsor Clancy would say is that it changed my perception of reality. Clancy would say that we have a disease of perception. As alcoholics, we see the world, but we see it terribly, and we don't see it correctly. And this tool in particular helps me to change my perception. Clancy's sponsor, Chuck Chamberlain, wrote a book that he called A New Pair of Glasses. Okay. New Pair of Glasses. Okay. Anyone here ever read New Pair of Glasses or familiar with it or heard of Chuck C? Okay. I like to think about this. Okay. Because Chuck C could have written that he wrote that book. It was actually based on a talk that he gave. But in that talk, he could have picked any title he wanted for that book across that talk that he gave. And the title for the book that he landed on was A New Pair of Glasses. So this book was really kind of his thoughts, his reflections, his recollections, his feelings, and his memoirs about decades sober and Alcoholics Anonymous. He could have named that book anything. And he chose to name it A New Pair of Glasses. And I think that's because he believes, as Clancy believed, as I believe, that the change of perception that we get in Alcoholics Anonymous is one of the most important changes that we go through. And this point that we're going to talk about tonight is truly where that perception, that change of perception as alcoholics begins to occur. So with that said, let's go to page 65. Now, Brad, I think, is online, but he's not here tonight. Benjamin Collins, are you there, brother? Oh, there you are. Yeah. Hey, man. How do you feel, Ben, about being our reader tonight?
Yeah, I can read.
Okay, that would be excellent. So now let's go to page 66 in our book, and we are going to start at, it is plain that a life which includes deep resentment.
It is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile. But with the alcoholic, whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. We found that it is fatal. For when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again.
Okay, so do you remember last week, guys, I talked about Wi-Fi. I talked about how I like to think about AA and God is, our higher power is Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi and the great Wi-Fi in the sky. And if I'm not connected to the Wi-Fi, if I can't get on with my laptop or my phone, the problem is not that the Wi-Fi isn't there. The problem isn't that the Wi-Fi has abandoned me or that the Wi-Fi doesn't love me anymore. Okay, the problem is that I need to change something about my connection to that power. Okay, and this is exactly why. That line in particular, for when harboring such feelings, these resentments, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. I can't get connected to the power. Okay. It is possible for me to believe in God, to have faith in God, and yet keep him out of my life and keep him out of my heart. Why? Because there's too much of me between me and God. There's no room for God. I can't get connected. And that's the purpose of AA. AA is about discovering, uncovering, and discarding the things within me that are cutting me off from this power. Okay. So it says, for when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again. And for us to drink is to die. Okay. So this tool in step 4, column step four is the one of the first attempts that we are getting in the spiritual toolkit to start removing the things within us that are blocking us from this power. Okay. Ben, next line, please.
If we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be dubious luxuries of men, of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison.
All right, I just want to say about this word brainstorm. This is a change of vernacular from the 1930s to today. Today, if we're talking about brainstorming, we would be talking about like being all together at a corporate retreat somewhere. We'd have a big whiteboard and we'd be brainstorming our strategy for the company or whatnot, okay? But you'll see Rob just posted there that brainstorm in the 1930s meant something much different. Brainstorm in the 1930s meant just being angry and crazy and so on. So it says the grouch and the brainstorm, that's what that means, are not for us, okay? So now it says, and here's the direction on page 66, we turned back to the list, okay? So Ben, can you read that for us?
We turned back to the list, for it held the key to the future. We were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. In this state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had power to actually kill. How could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol.
Okay, so one of the things that I always like to point out here, guys, is that the wrongdoings of others, and it says fancied or real, okay? Fancied, which is like fantasied. It means it didn't really happen. I kind of imagined it or made it up, or real, okay? Now, here's the thing. As we go through step four and we start to write this stuff out, invariably, I will find that some of this stuff, as I start to write it out, I'll realize, well, this didn't really happen. Like it's fancied. It didn't really happen. It didn't really happen that way. Sometimes just taking it out and putting it on paper, you start to realize like, man, I've been kind of making this up to myself for years. It didn't really happen that way. And in an instant, it's gone. Such is the power of step four. On the other hand, sometimes the people that I'm putting in column one wanted to hurt me, intended to hurt me, planned to hurt me, and were successful in that enterprise. They caused me great harm, and they were happy about causing me harm. Okay? Surely I must be able to be angry at them. That's a justifiable resentment, right? And they may be the more dubious luxury of normal men, but for me, those things are poison. So how do we find a way to forgive people that actually hurt me, that actually wanted to cause me harm, that were abusive to me and caused me harm in my life? Because there were some, definitely, particularly, looking back at childhood and so on. There were things that happened to me that I used as an excuse for my ongoing drinking for years because those people hurt me. And how do we find a way to forgive them? It's impossible, right? Wrong. And we're going to read through exactly one of the most powerful tools that we have in Alcoholics Anonymous for learning to let go of these resentments and for learning how to forgive others. And if I had to summarize it in one phrase, it would be that we pray for our enemies. We pray for our enemies. Okay? Now, if that sounds familiar to you, it ought to, because many religions have talked about this for years, that we need to pray for the people who harmed us. And that's what we are going to learn to do now. And here's one thing I want you guys to understand. In step four right now, we are not. Can you guys see the whiteboard screen right now? In step four, we are not in column four right now. The part that I'm talking to you about right now is not column four. What I am talking to you about right now is a prayer that happens and occurs between column 3 and column 4. We learned we had to begin to pray for the people who had wronged us, okay? And so this next line, Ben, I'm just going to read it for us. It says here, this was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick, okay? We're going to start looking at the people that we've listed in column 1 who harmed us as spiritually sick people. Another way that I like to look at it, and in no way am I trying to rewrite anything here in the book, I would never do that, but this is something that helped my understanding of this, is to think of them as sick or suffering. We look at them as suffering people. Okay, they are suffering. This person that I've listed in column 1, suffering. And when I can see them as a suffering person, and I start to look at them that way, suddenly my anger for them begins to diminish automatically. And what I needed to see and begin to look at is that the people who harmed me may have not even wanted to harm me, but they were suffering, and their suffering was spilling out of them and caused me to suffer. And that I may not even be the first victim of their suffering. Who is the first victim of their suffering? They were the first victim of their own suffering. Okay? And that allowed me to begin to develop a little bit of compassion for them. Okay? And it allowed me to begin to clear the channel of anger that had been locked in my heart for years before going into column 4. Okay. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to learn exactly what they have as the prayer in the big book, exactly what they suggest we say for these people. We look at them as sick or suffering people. Then on page 67, it says, though we did not like their symptoms and the way they disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. Okay. I just want to explain this quickly. It says, though we did not like their symptoms, that's column 2. Their symptoms are column 2. And how these disturbed us, that's column 3. Okay? So we didn't like their symptoms. The way that what we wrote down, what they did to us, that's their symptoms of their suffering. And the way they disturbed us is how it affected me, self-esteem, physical security, financial security, and so on. They, like ourselves, were sick too. They were sick and suffering, okay? So now it says, we asked God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done, okay? So what I require my sponsees to do at this point is in between column 3 and when we start column 4. I was just doing this with the sponsee yesterday. Okay. We're going to say this prayer for every person on our step 4. If you have 72 people on your step 4, you're going to say this prayer. Yes, you're going to say it 72 times. It'll be good for you. Okay. I probably had no problem drinking 72 beers over the course of a weekend. Okay. So no problem in saying 72 prayers. Okay. And this is what we're going to do. Let's say, for example, the name of the guy that I was resentful at was Paul. Okay. Paul is column 1, Paul. Why? Here's what Paul did. Boom. Here's how it affected me. Now I'm going to say this. Paul is a sick and suffering man. How can I be helpful to Paul? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. Okay. Then in the margin, in the space right after it says, thy will be done, I want everyone to write a little note that says, see page 552, page 552. And we're going to go there in a minute. Okay. So again, Paul is a sick man. How can I be helpful to Paul? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. Okay. And one of the things I always like to point out, brothers and sisters, is that the short form of this prayer, the short form is simply, God save me from being angry. Okay? If nothing else, when I feel myself getting enraged, which doesn't, I'm so grateful to say, doesn't happen like it used to, man. Okay? My character has changed. Um, there's a saying that people will use to describe another human being. They'll say he is slow to anger. That individual is slow to anger. And one of my goals in my life, man, is just one time to have somebody describe me as a person that is slow to anger. I'm not there yet, but at least I don't think, man, I used to go to AA meetings and people would say, like, you have problems with anger. And they would hand me like little anger management, like pamphlets. And this guy gave me a book on, like, you've got, here's these happy little elves managing their anger in this AA meeting. Like, I had anger issues, man. I was an angry dude. And this is just my observation about life, but I see typically with alcoholics, there's two types of anger. There are people who are outwardly angry and want to hurt others. And then there are people such as myself who are inwardly angry. And when I get angry, I don't want to hurt other people. I want to hurt myself. Okay. And anyway, that's just an observation. So we're going to say that prayer. Now it says, God save me from being angry. I think it's worth noting that it doesn't say, God, please take away my anger. Or it doesn't say, God, please remove my anger. It says, God, save me from being angry. Okay. Why is that? Two reasons. Number one, because these things are poison. It's poison. This is lethal for alcoholics. Resentment kills more alcoholics than anything else. Okay. In particular, let me just say to all of you right now, the single most important or most dangerous, I believe, resentment that someone can have in AA, or that an alcoholic can have, is a resentment towards someone or something in Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay? Please hear me on that. If you have a resentment towards anything or anyone in AA, do not treat it lightly. It is automatically a $50 bill resentment. Okay? You guys hear me on that? Show of hands if you guys hear me on that. Okay? And I'll tell you why. Because nothing will convince and allow my alcoholism to slither back into my brain and keep me separated from Alcoholics Anonymous, from my solution, from my lifeblood, faster than thinking I'm ticked off at my home group because of what they did at the last business meeting. Okay? It's lethal, kills people. If I have a resentment towards anyone or anything in AA, it's a $50 bill. Okay? Full stop. Thank you for hearing me on that. So that's what we do. Paul is a sick man. How can I be helpful to Paul? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. We begin to look at Paul as a suffering person. We start to see, like, man, yeah, he's really suffering. He's hurting, and that's why he's, behaving like this. We just try to see them as suffering. More so than sick, because the thing is, for me, if I'm saying, like, oh yeah, Paul's just a sick SOB, that's his problem. Like, not a lot of spiritual, grace in that. However, if I can give him the grace to say, like, I see that he's hurting, and we are all suffering. Okay, let's talk about Buddhism for a minute. Anybody here know anything about Buddhism? What's the first noble truth in Buddhism? What's Buddhism? Michael, I'm just going to ask you, if you can tell us, what is the first noble truth, Buddha's first noble truth in Buddhism? Oh, I'm sorry,
Hi,
buddy.
I'm
There you go.
Michael. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi,
The
Michael.
first, the first noble truth is dukkha, meaning life inherently involves suffering.
Oh yeah, attaboy, Michael. That's the best answer I've heard in a long time. Okay? Yeah, Buddhism, life is suffering. That's the first noble truth in Buddhism. What does that tell us? We're all suffering, man. Everybody's suffering. Okay? And if I can start to give people that grace in seeing and understanding their suffering, and that their suffering is spilling out of me and causing me to suffer, okay, from there, it's a little bit better for me than just saying, well, he's a sick SOB. That's his problem. Okay, that's easy for me to say, but understanding that people are suffering is super important. Okay. So now I mentioned page 552. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to say the prayer, Paul is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God save him from being angry. Thy will be done. Then we're going to go to page 552. And this is a story in the back of the book. Long story short, this individual is going through the step 4 treatment. They're feeling a lot of relief. It's very good, but they have one resentment they can't let go of. It's towards a parent of theirs. And they're worried they're going to get drunk behind this. And they read an article in a magazine where a minister, a priest, or what have you, is talking about resentment. And here's what he says. Ben, if you would be so kind as to read the first paragraph on page 552 for us, please.
He said, in effect, if you have a resentment you want to be free of, if you will pray for the person or the thing that you resent, you will be free. If you will ask in prayer for everything you want for yourself to be given to them, you will be free. Ask for their health, their prosperity, and their happiness, and you will be free. Even when you don't really want it for them, and your prayers are only words, and you don't mean it, go ahead and do it anyway. Do it every day for 2 weeks, and you will find you have come to mean it and want it for them. And you will realize that where you used to feel bitterness, resentment, and hatred, you now feel compassionate, understanding, and love.
Wow. Huge, eh? Huge, huge. And I remember the first time I read that, it's like, you say this prayer for them and ask for their prosperity, their happiness, and you will be free. And I thought to myself, well, fine, I'll just say it. I don't even mean it. I'll just go ahead and say it anyway. And the next line was like, even when you don't really want it for them, your prayers are only words, go ahead and say it anyway. I was like, whoa. And it's almost like they knew, right? And they know how we are. So what's the time frame? Every day for 2 weeks is what it says. Now, this brings me back to my initial comments about nickel and dime resentments versus $50 bills. Nickel and dime resentments oftentimes will evaporate as soon as I start writing about them. I say the prayer one time, see him as a suffering person. Yeah, it's no big deal. I totally get it. Others, not so easy. Those $50 bills, man, I had to pray. And I had to pray, and I had to pray, and I had to pray every day for 2 weeks, and things would feel a little bit better. And I'll tell you what, man, one of the, to my previous comment, one of the most dangerous resentments I had over the last many years was someone at my AA home group, someone at Primary Purpose Group. And man, this person, he and I would get into it, and then I'd pray, and I'd pray, and I'd pray, and I'd pray, and to get a little bit better. And then I'd go back to PPG and he would do something again and I'd be off again, ran another 2 weeks for this guy. And, but it works. It works. I'm happy to say that this guy and I today are friends, and I've been to his house for events, and it's an amazing transformation. The healing, transformative power of forgiveness with God. Okay. Now, listen, guys, one of the things as we're talking here about forgiveness, there's 2 things I want to say about forgiving others, because that's what we're really talking about here. Okay. How do we forgive others? People often say, well, we have to forgive ourselves first. I have to forgive myself and then and then I can forgive others. And like, I don't know, don't self-centered alcoholics just love to hear that? Okay. I need to make amends to myself first. And then, look, man, I don't know about any of that. I just know that I hear that stuff in AA, and I look in this book and I don't find anything about having to forgive myself first to forgive other people. Okay. What our book says is that we pray for them. Why? Because I don't think that I necessarily have the power to forgive others. I got to put the power where it belongs. God is the all forgiving. Okay. And I'm asking for his help and his power to help me forgive these people. Okay. That's where that power has to come from. You guys with me on that? Okay. And I used to sit and like intellectually concede to like forgiving these people because I knew it was like a good idea and the right thing to do. And I didn't get anywhere until I started to invite the power of God into this relationship with these people and started to feel some level of forgiveness for them. Okay. And My problem with forgiving other people is that I always felt like if I was forgiving them, I was letting them off the hook. And I didn't want to let them off the hook, some of them. I wasn't ready to let them off the hook. Okay? Because they caused me harm. And if I forgive them, I'm just giving them a pass. Okay? That's not the case, guys. That's not the case. One of the most important things I ever learned in AA in terms of forgiveness is that forgiving someone does not mean condoning what they did. It just means I am no longer going to hold on to it. It means I am going to let it go. Forgiving does not mean condoning what they did. Forgiving just means letting go. I heard this phrase and I love it. Forgiving someone is accepting the apology that is never going to come. Okay? This person is never going to apologize to me, and yet I will accept their apology anyway. That's beautiful, man. Okay? So that's what we're talking about. This is the prayer in between column 3 and column 4. Now, let's get into it, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. Let's get back to page 67. And now it says referring to our list again. See, we're just following directions here. Okay? Referring to our list again. Well, what do you know? We're done saying the prayer. Now we're referring to our list again. I suggest to you all that you write step 4, column 4. Right there. Okay? So make a note of where the prayer was. Okay? Where the prayer was that we talked about. Okay? And you know what? Just to be clear, so that you guys all have this locked in, let's go to page 64 for a moment. I want everyone to have this locked in so you know where we are and what we're talking about, okay? Page 64 at the bottom, it says, in dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. That's column 1. Column 1. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. So make a little note for yourselves, guys. That's column 1. And I'm not asking you to do this for yourself. I'm asking you to do this for when you sit down with your sponsees, that you know where this information is in the book. Okay? Again, what's the transition that every alcoholic needs to make in Alcoholics Anonymous from being takers to being givers? So have that mentality right now that someday in the not too distant future, you're going to be sitting down with your sponsees. I want you to know where to go in the book, okay, for column 4. So column 1, we listed people, institutions, or principles of whom we're angry. Next line says we asked ourselves why we were angry. That's column 2. Why? Column 1 is who, column 2 is why, okay? At the top of page 65, where it says on our grudge list, we said opposite each name our injuries. That is column 3. Our injuries or affects my. That's column 3. Okay, column 3 is in the book. Then at the bottom of page 66, where it says this was our course, we realized the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. On to page 67. This is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God save him from being angry. Thy will, not mine, be done. That is the step 4 resentment prayer that occurs between column 3 and column 4. And now, where it says, guys, referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. This is step 4, column 4. Okay. So, Ben, will you read that paragraph for us, please, sir? Referring to our list again.
Referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set the matter straight.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ben. Okay, so now what I would like you to do is somewhere in the margin there, in the part about step 4, column 4, referring to our list again, that paragraph is column 4. Somewhere around there, make a note that says see page 62. Okay? Because we're going to refer back to page 62, where it says selfishness, self-centeredness. And Ben, would you go to page 62 once you make the note there? Go to page 62 and read that paragraph for us, because we're going to come back to it.
Selfishness and self-centeredness. That we think is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-thinking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some point, sometime in the past, we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt.
Okay, so now, guys, just keeping that in mind, okay, and you might want to keep a little bookmark on page 62 because we're going to look back at it a couple times here. We're in column 4 now, okay? We have column 1, column 2, column 3. We've said the prayer. Now we're in column 4. And I like to title column 4, Where Am I to Blame? Okay? Some people will say it's about, well, what's my part in this situation? But I've heard it described that it's like, if I call it what's my part, it's assuming that the other person has a part too. And we're not here to look at other people's parts. We're here to look at where am I to blame? Where am I to blame in this deal? Okay? And there are 3 places, guys, where we are going to look at where am I to blame. Okay? 3 places we're going to look. Number 1, we're going to look in the past. And we're going to refer to page 62. We're going to look in the past. Then we're going to look in the mirror. And then we're going to look at today. Where am I to blame today? And I'm going to take you guys in the next 12 minutes. I'm going to take you through all 3 of these. Okay? So first of all, where am I to blame in the past? Now, I really needed to understand this because I misunderstood this in AA for many years. I thought that when we got to column 4, and it said, where are we to blame? What's my part? I thought what it meant was, column 1, this person, column 2, they did this thing to me, column 3, here's how it affected me, and column 4, here's how I responded to it. Here's how I reacted to it. That's where I'm to blame. That is not what we're looking at whatsoever. What we want to do is look at column 1 and this person, and I want to review the past and look at the question it asks on page 62. In what way did I step on the toes of this person and they retaliated? In what way did I make a decision based on self before this thing in column 2 happened? Before this thing happened, what decisions based on self did I make that later put me in this position to be hurt? Do y'all remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about if I'm living in self-will, I'm in collision with other people? Therefore, if I'm in collision with other people, I can look at the fact that I'm probably living in self-will. Column 2, whatever happened in this resentment, that's the collision, okay? So what decisions based on self did I make in the past that put me in this position to be hurt? That's the reality of the situation. Okay, it says on page 62, sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation. I want to believe I was just standing there minding my own business when for no reason whatsoever, this person just came up and absolutely put the whammy on me for no reason. I'm the victim here, okay? And yet it says invariably. What does that mean? It means every time we find that we had made decisions based on self that put me in this position to be hurt. Let's take a look at an example. Let's go to page 65. Let's imagine that I'm Mr. Brown, Okay. Or rather, let's say I'm Bill Wilson and I'm writing this resentment out. Mr. Brown, why? His attention to my wife. He told my wife of my mistress. Brown may get my job at the office. Now, can you guys see? There's one here that's absolutely glaring. It sticks out like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. If you look at it and you know how to look at it. What decision did I make prior to this that put me in this position to be hurt by Mr. Brown? Anybody? Anybody want to take a guess? Ben.
He has a mistress.
If I don't have a mistress, Mr. Brown doesn't get to tell my wife about my mistress. Okay? Now but we don't see it that way, do we? We don't see it that way. I just see that Mr. Brown came and did this to me. How could he? Okay? Now, what else am I resentful at? His attention to my wife. Well, gosh, what decisions based on self did I make that put me in that position? Who am I paying attention to? I'm not paying attention to my wife. Who am I paying attention to? My mistress. Okay? But we don't see it that way. We just see that Mr. Brown is doing this to me. Okay? Brown may get my job at the office. Well, gosh, guys, do you think it's the case that I'm the greatest employee on the planet when I first come to AA? In fact, let me prove it to you. Let's go down to the resentment to the third one there, my employer. Why am I resentful at my employer? Ben, do you want to read it for us?
Unreasonable, unjust, overbearing, threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account.
Drinking and padding my expense account. I'll tell you something else. There's only one place in the world I've ever heard the phrase padding the expense account, and that's in Alcoholics Anonymous. Anywhere else in the world, they call that theft from an employer. Okay? Now, you're telling me, oh, Mr. Brown's going to get your job at the office. How did this happen? That's terrible. Who did this to you? Who did this to you? That's terrible. Mr. Brown's going to get your job at the office. I made decisions based on self that put me in this position to be hurt. Okay? You guys with me on that? Does that make sense? Now let's take a look at Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones, she's a nut. She snubbed me. She committed her husband for drinking. He's my friend. She's a gossip. Okay, well, she snubbed me. Well, I wonder why. I wonder why she would snub me. I'm out drinking with her husband, destroying her family. Okay, but I don't see it that way, do I? This is the reality of it. She committed her husband for drinking. Yeah, to get him away from me, because I'm out drinking with them every night, but I have no regard for her. I have no regard for their family, for what's happening. All I want selfishly is a drinking buddy. Okay, but I'm not thinking about them or their family at all. Again, what decisions based on self did I make that put me in this position to be hurt? I'll give you an example from my own life. Column 1, his name was Mike. Column 2, why? Because he humiliated me in a big party full of people and told everyone that I was a thief and that you couldn't trust me and so on and so forth. That Kevin Olson, he'd steal the fillings out of your teeth if he could, on and on and on. And everybody laughed and and I was humiliated. I felt that big, right? And I carried that for years. How dare he? That guy, humiliated me in a party. How could he do that? Okay, so I pray for Mike, see him as a suffering person. Great. Going to column 4. What decisions based on self did I make? In what ways did I step on Mike's toes? And he retaliated by humiliating me in a party full of people, telling him all I was a thief. Anyone want to take a guess what I did to him? I stole from him. I was a thief. I stole from him every chance I got. I stole alcohol. I stole drugs. I stole money. I stole cigarettes. Okay, but I couldn't see that. I couldn't see. All I could see is what he did to me, seemingly without provocation. I couldn't see that in reality, I put myself in that position by stealing from him. You guys with me on that? Does that make sense, you guys? Okay. So now we're going to move in. I've got 5 minutes to go. We're going to have to go quick. Next, mirror. Okay. Where am I to blame when I look in the mirror? This one's very easy. All that I mean by this is that the thing that I am resentful about, that I'm blaming this person for doing, is it possible when I look in the mirror that I am guilty of person, but just in general, have I ever done something like that? Or am I capable of doing something like that? So if we looked at Mr. Brown, Brown may get my job at the office. Hey, have I ever tried to angle somebody out of their career to make my own career better? Have I ever done something like that? Could I do something like that? Absolutely. He paid attention to my wife. Hey, back in my drinking days, did I ever pay attention to somebody else's wife? Absolutely. Okay. He told my wife of my mistress. I did that exact thing in university. When I was in university, I wanted to be with this person and they were with someone else, and I knew that he had cheated on her, and I made him, it was disastrous. I did that exact thing. Okay. So when we talk about compassion, here's the thing. When I look at the person that I'm resentful and ask myself, can I be that way? Okay, if that person, she's a gossip, okay, Mrs. Jones, she's a nut, she snubbed me. Have I ever snubbed somebody? Yeah. She's a gossip. Have I ever gossiped? Do I ever gossip? Like, yeah. And in this way, looking at it this way, we start to develop compassion and understanding that this person and I actually have a lot in common. Sympathy is I feel sorry for you. Not a lot of spiritual value in that. Empathy is I can feel what you feel. There's a little bit more spiritual value in that. But compassion means we are the same. We are the same. And I have compassion for you in my heart because I understand. Okay. Where we used to feel bitterness and hatred, we now feel compassionate, understanding, and love. So that's what I mean when I say looking in the mirror. When we talk about, guys, looking at today, where am I to blame in this resentment today? I'm going to talk about this very quickly. In particular, for if we have any type of trauma, and in particular childhood abuse, and I want to tell you all right now, if you are here in AA and you have suffered some level of childhood abuse as a child, I want you to know that you are not alone. And we can help you with that, okay? And here's the thing. I heard someone say a while ago that if you were sexually abused as a child, that all goes on your sex conduct inventory. And I could not more strongly disagree with that. If I was sexually abused as a child, that resentment needs to go in step 4 in my column 1, who it was, column 2, what they did, column 3, how that affected me. And where am I to blame in that resentment today? Absolutely, I had no part in the past. Of course not. Of course not. I did not do anything to put myself in that position. Or if you were harmed by someone, you know, if a woman was assaulted by a man, she did nothing to put herself. That's not what we're talking about. The first 2 parts, past and mirror, do not apply. Okay? However, I need to look at where is my part? What is my part in that resentment today? And I will tell you that what I did and what I've seen many alcoholics do, and this might sound familiar, is that I would take that trauma that I went through that is legitimate and needs to be taken care of in trauma therapy. I would take that trauma and I would use it as an excuse and a justification for my ongoing drinking and my ongoing bad behavior as an alcoholic. Okay? That's what I would do. And if something happened to me many years ago and I was harmed by them, I am for sure a victim of what they did. But years later, if I'm still using that thing as an excuse for my ongoing behavior and my ongoing drinking, I am now a volunteer. Okay? And what I know is that I had to get real about that, and I had to accept that, and I had to stop doing that in order that I could get sober and get on a solid foundation in Alcoholics Anonymous, so that then years later, when I was 4 years sober, I was finally able to go do some real genuine trauma therapy on the stuff that I needed to take care of. Okay. But if I was still drinking while I did that, I would do what I always did. I'd go to meeting number one, I'd go to meeting number two. It would start to get hard. I'd be gone and drunk again. I needed to get a solid foundation of a relationship with God, relationship with a sponsor, in a home group, in the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, in the Big Book, in the fellowship of the Spirit. And then with that strength and power, then go and take care of therapy in my life for those difficult things that we bring to AA sometimes. Okay. But invariably, that's what I have seen is that I am fully capable of taking something that is legitimate trauma and I'll morph it into something that sounds a lot like trauma. It's a word that rhymes with trauma. Okay. Starts with a D. Anyone want to guess what it is? I'll take that and turn it into drama. Okay. And I will use that. Man, I'll sit in a bar and get drunk and tell you about my trauma. That's how I was, man. Okay. That's how I was. And I'm not saying that my trauma wasn't legitimate or that anyone on this call isn't legitimate. What I am saying is that I had to start growing up about this and taking responsibility for my sobriety and stop using that as a get out of jail free card and a justification for me to go continue using and using and using. I had to take responsibility for it myself. It involved prayer and it involved me accepting that where am I to blame in that resentment today? I needed to stop using it as an excuse for my ongoing terrible behavior, okay? And my ongoing drinking and my ongoing addiction and using at that trauma. Does that make sense, guys? That can be a hard pill for people to swallow, man. That can be a tough one. And I always hesitate to bring this up because I'm always sure this is going to be the week that someone's going to freak out and say, how dare you say that about me and my trauma? I'm not. I'm just saying we need to start getting honest and real with ourselves about my drinking behavior and how I'm using these things, okay? All right, that's a tough one, man. That's a tough one. All right, we made it. We made it though. We're okay. We're okay. All right, guys, that'll be it for tonight. Now we're gonna close with the Lord's Prayer. Please don't leave, don't disappear. One of the things I love to do is just go around the room, say hello to everybody, get to know you all. Simply name what your name is, what your home group is, and what city or town you live in around the world. And I'd love to meet you all. And with that, Rob, we will stop recording.